Hi lovely people, thanks so much for coming to watch this video all about how to self-publish your children's book. And because it's World Book Day this week, I thought what better time to share this video and also a little bit about how I managed to self-publish two of my children's books. So let's get into it. Okay, throughout this video I'm probably going to share some of the mistakes that I made as well so that you don't make them as well. I have two children's books, one the Emobeans and the Feelings, and the second one, the Emobeans and the Character Strengths. So the first one was published through a hybrid company. You can research online and find lots of different companies that will help you publish your book. This isn't something I would do again. This is why I self-published the second one, the Emobeans and the Character Strengths, out here in the UAE all by myself. So I'm going to talk about some of the differences too. With the hybrid company, what you do is you get in touch with them. Normally a salesperson contacts you after you visit their website and they explain their processes. So the benefits of publishing through a company like this is they have lots of the things that you need on demand. You've written your story, you've got a manuscript, and they will have illustrators that can bring the characters to life. They also help you find the ISBN number, which is the international book number that you have to have on the back of any book, so that it's recognisable barcode. And also they will have an editor, they can help you build a website and promote your book. They have websites themselves, radio stations, things like that. However, the con of publishing through a hybrid company like this is the cost, and it was pricey. I knew that it would be, but again, lesson learned, and I wouldn't do that method again for self-publishing. For some people it works out better, for me not so much. The one that I actually chose was in the US, and the royalty checks that I've earned from them, I can't cash them in the country that I live, so it just didn't work at all. But I was so desperate to get the story out there, and that's the decision that I made, although I didn't use their editors and I didn't use their illustrators, so I'm going to talk about that a bit more in a moment. So one of the things I would recommend if you're self-publishing through a hybrid company is although they're a publishing company and a publishing house as such, and they have all the things that you need to publish a children's book, the main benefit of this is distribution. So once my book was printed, they are in contact with all the companies that can print on demand. I think the Emobeans and the Feelings was available in something like 32,000 online bookstores on a print on demand basis. So that's a benefit, because distribution is massive, and also it's global for this one. They can also have marketing departments, which again are very costly, specifically with the company that I chose, and I didn't choose to have any of their marketing because I just thought the budgets or the costs that they were asking weren't suitable for a first-time author like me. So to avoid this, one of the other things that you can do is write your manuscript and send it off to literary agents. This isn't something that I did. I'm going to do it in future with another of the stories that I have. What happens is when you manage to connect with a literary agent that are happy to represent you, what they then do is send off your story to a variety of publishing houses. And if you're really lucky and your book's good enough, then the publishing house takes it on and they deal with all the things like editing and illustration, distribution and things like that. So after I'd learned all the costly lessons from publishing through the hybrid company, I decided to self-publish the second book, the Emobeans and the Character Strengths, completely by myself. So I want to talk a little bit about the process first and then some of the lessons that I've learned. So the first thing that I did was spend time with the story and the ideas that I had. So the Emobeans characters are basically little characters that I love who are teaching children and those that read with them all about positive psychology concepts through a children's book. This was made in mind for the children in my own class, but also children, in all stages of primary. And I just thought a children's story is the best way to make this resource. So I've had the idea in mind for a really long time. So after I finished my Masters in Positive Psychology and Coaching, I think it was the day after I sent in my dissertation, I started writing the story. Now the first draft came out all in a jumble. It just came out with, typos and paragraphs and everything all over the place. But that was the first step, was to get the story out of my mind and onto a screen or onto a Word document. And in fact, I did something before that. I actually scribbled it out on my iPad on the Sketches app, where I wanted to kind of handwrite the story. Just that came out first, and then I typed it up, but both of them were all in a jumble. So after that, I spent time refining it and, really getting it to a place where I thought, to me, it would be publishable. But I knew from my first book that it wouldn't be the case. Now, although that I went with a hybrid company for the first story, I decided not to go with their editors. I wanted to have a bit more control with the editing process, so I actually found one myself. There's a great website called Upwork, and it's like a freelance company where you can connect with freelancers in every type of area. So eventually I found an editor who'd worked with Disney and Scholastic, and she was just brilliant. So although this was really pricey, it was worth it for me because it was my first book and I really wanted it to make an impact and be well received by whoever picked it up. So I actually spent more money on the editing process myself. The next thing I did then, after she'd refined it, pulled it all together, was really happy with it, I decided I also wanted to be in control of the illustrations. So from the hybrid company, the Illustrator prices that they offered were really expensive, page by page. I was just like, this budget is thousands and thousands, I couldn't do it. So what you have to do if you're self-publishing and finding your own illustrator, you have to have a budget that works for you. So there are so many illustrators available in Upwork, so many talented creative people. So I spoke to a few different illustrators, and then I met Krisztian Gacsi, who is just fantastic. I loved his work. So we set up a call and we just spoke, and I knew that he could really see the vision behind the story, and he really believed in the message of the book as well, which I think is hugely important. So then what I did, we agreed to do, was I would write a little kind of vision board with some ideas of what I could see for each page, and sent that off to him. And then what Krisztian did was a couple of illustrations to start with and showed me them. We decided, what was going to happen in each page. And because he's so fantastic, he just brought the Emobeans to life and he made this story gorgeous. So the kids love looking at the illustrations, and what he did was put little details in there that kids love to find. So it just makes the whole book so much more enjoyable. So the second thing, or third thing, I don't even know what number I'm on now, is the illustration process is hugely important if you're writing a children's book. So then the next thing that I did, especially with the second one, was find the ISBN number. Now, if you look at all your books, you'll have noticed this barcode, and every book needs to have one. It's how it's like recognised globally, almost like it's passport almost. But if you're self-publishing, it's really important to have one of those. Now, they aren't too costly. You need to do your research and find out which country you're in, if it's recognised internationally and things like that. So if you're self-publishing, it shouldn't cost too much, but it's worth doing your research because there are companies that overcharge for this. So that's definitely worth doing. The other thing that you have to do is make sure that you have permissions, because some countries need media permissions, and in the UAE I had to apply to the Media Council for Youth to get permission to have the second book printed here. The other thing that I did now with the second book is find a printer. So here in the UAE I found a printer who could make this book for me in physical form basically, and I was involved in choosing the paper quality. I knew that I wanted it to be hardback, so that's something that I did. I have far too many copies of this now, they're all in my cupboard but that's a lesson that I learned, is not to have too many printed, but I know eventually I'll be able to print a second batch because they'll all sell. Another thing you need to think about is the distribution of your self-published children's book. Now, the difference between the first and second of my books is the first one, because it was published through this hybrid company, which is in the US, they are involved in all the distribution. So like I said before, it's listed on like 32,000 online retailers or something like that. It makes it really accessible for people to buy. The second one, still in the process of finding out more about distribution. So because I've completely created this book on my own, and we did have Krisztian was the illustrator for this one as well, so it was great to have that relationship with him. I didn't get the editor to look over the second one because it's a poem, it's just a different structure, so I was really happy with what I'd written myself. So I just didn't have the editor for that one, but I definitely had the same illustrator just to keep the theme going. So distribution for the second one's a bit trickier. So what I've been looking at is Etsy in the UK, that's how it's going to be distributed there. In the UAE, I've been part of little crafters markets and things and able to sell it, and it's also listed on my website. But I know out here there are more distribution companies that I need to get in touch with, because a lot of the chain bookstores won't take books personally from you. You have to distribute them through a distributing house, so I need to get in touch with some of them out there, which can also be a bit tricky. I'm sure in the UK it's the same. There are companies that will do print on demand for you, so I know there's one called Ingram Press, I think. So I'm going to have a look at them because I know they've just opened a branch in the UAE. So once you've got a connection or an account with a company like this who can print your book on demand, you don't have to order 8 million copies from the printing house like I did. Okay, another thing you need to do for your self-published children's book is to market. So I use social media, I use friends and family's recommendations, but also another way to get your book out there is just donate copies to schools, donate copies to children's charities or wellbeing centres or places that just align with the message of your children's book. And when you do that, you can also leave a little card or a QR code or something where people can order their own copy. So that's something that I need to do a bit more of, but time is always an issue, but it's something that I'm looking forward to doing soon. So like I said before, it's always worth having a go at looking at some literary agents to see if they'll accept your manuscript. But if you want to self-publish a children's book, there are steps that you can take, and I hope that this video is going to help outline some of them for you, and that you've maybe learned from some of the mistakes that I made, costly mistakes at times as well. And the first hybrid route does work for some people. But you can definitely self-publish yourself. I would just say always have distribution in place, make sure you've got the permissions, and market. So thanks for spending time here, and one of the next videos I'm going to do soon is how to self-publish a children's book for children, and I'll set up a video to help them along the way on their self-publishing journey as well. So take care, and if you haven't already, I'd love if you subscribe to this channel. See you soon.